Our last form that we are going to look at today is a cylinder. Whoops, here we go, cylinder. So again, this is in between a sphere and a cube with how you need to shade it. So you've got the curve, like you would see on a sphere with the gradual changes, very smooth changes in value. But then you also have a flat edge. So you want to make sure that the values of this are different from the values of the curve. And then you can see we have almost like parallel lines with a curved top to it for our cast shadow. So we're going to go ahead and draw our cylinder now. We're going to start with an oval shape for the top of our cylinder. And then I'm going to erase a little bit the cast shadow there. We're going to have two parallel lines that come down on either side. Now here's a common mistake that students make. They draw a flat line there. That is not how we want to finish our cylinder. Remember, parallel lines are key whenever you're drawing geometric forms or drawing something in perspective. So we're going to try and keep this curve very similar to the curve of the top of our cylinder. So there we have our cylinder. I'm just cleaning up my edges a little bit, my lines. Next I'm going to draw where I will see my reflection. So if my light's coming from the top right area up here, we know that that would mean we see a little bit of a reflection right here along this baseline. Then I'm going to switch to my ebony, and like we looked at in the photo, this area is definitely our darkest. So I'm going to use my ebony along the side that is the most opposite. I'm going to shade. And we actually see quite a bit of darkness right up along this edge because it's in the shadow. The light's hitting the top of the cylinder more than it is the side. Now as we get closer to the right side, we are going to start to lighten our pressure a little bit so we can start getting those mid-tones. But to me this doesn't look quite dark enough, so I'm going to go back in and darken it up. Now I'm going to switch to my 4B. Just go in and add some of those mid-tone values. I'm going to bring a little bit of this shadow I'm seeing there up. I think I went a little too far with that dark, so I'm going to just take my eraser and lighten that. Come back in with my 4B. Help redefine that edge. I'm going to go with my 2H. And my reflection, or my highlight, is right in here. If I end up filling it in, I can always come back with my eraser. Now the top is going to be my lightest value, so I'm going to really use my 2H for most of this area. Again, we might erase that line so we're defining our edges with our values. Now if you were shading your background, that might also help define the edges with value. And you might make it just a little bit darker right up by this front corner, just to really help show where the edge of that top is, but we're keeping it fairly light. Once you have that all drawn, then you can sketch in where you see your cast shadow. So staying true, be stretching, since our light is to the upper right, it's stretched to the bottom left. And you'd see kind of a curved top to it. So I go back to my ebony, go right up along that reflection line. Right along that edge there with the ebony. Remember, that's the darkest area of our cast shadow because it's closest to the object. Starting to lighten my pressure as I work away from my object. Lighten it even more. So my cast shadow looks something like that. Now I'm ready to blend. I grab my blender. I'm going to really use that point to define those edges. Lost a little bit of my reflection, but that's okay. Really watching right along the edge there. Be careful. Remember, if you need to, if you lose your highlight, come back and erase it. Erase along your edges if you need to. Then it's time for the top of my sphere, or my cylinder. And lightly define it this way. I can even come back in, show my highlight there. And then last but not least, my cast shadow. And there you have Geometric Forms shaded.